your audible thing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of AirMech Talk, where it is real AirMech discussion talks for... I messed that entire thing up. Real discussions for real AirMech players, that's what it says at the top of the stream. Shut up. And this time, we do have a semi-full panel right now. We have one new panelist. CarbonSMASH, Insomniac 3-in-1, and Tipsy 3000 are returning panelists. CarbonSMASH will be joining us a little bit later. He is not able to join us quite yet, but he will be here in a little while. And first, we're just going to introduce our new panelist, who is BonGeBon. So, Bonji, your first time on AirMech Talk. Why don't you tell everyone about yourself and your AirMech history?
Hey, I'm Bonji. I like to say I started playing, say, Alpha. But normally I just kind of like found it on Chrome there anyway, so that's about it for when I started. And I really kind of quit, and I came back mid-beta to start playing seriously. So that's about when I started trying to find a good faction to join, and I found GW and all that kind of stuff. So favorite mech would be Bomber, Helix, Striker's all right. But basically anything that doesn't affect how I micro, because that's how I really prefer to play. I just like to play micro, but I don't like to play like the more pure micro stuff. Not Osprey, not Paladin. That's about it. And definitely Warhog or Angel, because those suck.
You don't like... Okay, never mind. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, we have here with us, once again, Insomniac. How are you today?
I am awake and caffeinated.
Good to know that what your name doesn't make sense. And Tipsy, how are you?
Hello. When do I get my free subs? My third time being here.
Never.
You haven't pushed my my card from last time too.
Duh. So we're gonna move on to the first topic of the day, which is gonna be the current state of the game. It is patch 29731. So this is the time where we go over basic gameplay changes since the last episode, and any specific things that we have noticed with overpowered, underpowered units, mechs, and parts, any issues with mechanics, and, you know, whatever we might have deemed as, or have noticed as, popular game trends. So we're going to start off with Insomniac. I was just wondering, what do you think of, let's start off with the death ray energy. It has been increased, the energy usage has been increased by 15%.
The death ray change or the efficiency of the beam itself hasn't really hurt saucer play too much. When people use death ray, they use it to kill armored units most of the time, and they're usually not in places where they can hang around too long. Most saucer players do not go through their entire energy bar just using death ray. So the efficiency change, as a big fan of the saucer, I have no complaints at all about it. It was very efficient before, and being slightly less now isn't an issue. Plus, there is a AirMech part for death ray energy efficiency if people really care.
That is actually right.
I want to mention something. At higher levels, when you have, like, let's say a paladin blocking for you, and you can, let's say, like level 12, don't you like see like a big difference
in power of the death ray, or just...
Yeah, at really high levels, but, you know, let's say you have like a paladin blocking for you, so you could stick around longer.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
that does make a difference.
It does, yeah. I used to play. Well, I played a little while ago, kind of heavily with Frisky. We went Saucer Osprey when it was broken, and I would be able to, as long as it wasn't too heavy with the AA, and even if it kind of was, as long as I focused that down first, he was able to heal me back up. And it's so broken, not necessarily because I was able to stay there for so long, just the energy efficiency was so crazy, and then, you know, the ground regen changed, that I would just be able to clear stuff really, really easily, and then just keep clearing because I would never run out of energy. So I think I've played it a little bit. It's obviously better with 15% less energy efficiency, but maybe we'll need a little bit more, just depending on how different input from players. So the biggest thing I would say this patch has been the level up bonus reduction. It used to be 5% for DPS and health gained every level, and now it's only 3. So it pretty much turns out that at the end of the game, before it would feel DPS and health wise, level 15 now is as if it was, I think, level 10 or 12 before. Either one is still a pretty huge difference. So guys, Tipsy, I think you said you did really feel this.
No, I didn't even realize that you actually boosted it. I mean, I knew mechs felt too strong, I guess. I mean, I've been playing since the patch too, and I didn't really seem to feel any difference. I don't know, that's just me.
Really? I kind of have a little. I mean, I know that, like, I really tried to get into late game just so I could really feel it and see how it is, and it's not so terrible. Like, mechs can't shred pushes as bad as it was before. So, I mean, late game, you know?
I mean, it's not like like Seekers or Flackers are killing me any faster. I mean, at least from what I feel like.
Okay.
They are.
So, Insomniac, how have you felt with it about it?
The thing is that most people won't notice it right away because it's all about leveling up in the late game, the way those stats have been affected and how they scale up. So I feel like, yeah, people might not notice until they get to like level 7 or 8 the difference, but I see it in like you said, the mech versus unit damage late game, but also the mech on mech damage, because the damage scaling up for certain mechs like Striker, that made their dogfighting so strong. It was a bit ridiculous with the ease that Striker players could kill people over their outposts with a little bit of dogfighting. And now it's like you have a chance to survive the dogfighting versus a Striker. Their Strikers are still right now very strong with the dogfighting capabilities, especially in 1v1s, because it's harder to chase away enemy mechs. But even in 2v2s, 3v3s, if there's more than one Striker player on an enemy team, you are going to be dying a lot more than versus other mechs.
Pretty much the same against a Warthog too. Bonji, I know you haven't gotten to play that much since the new patch, and you play mostly 1v1. So how's your impressions with this change been?
Yeah, I would agree with the Striker being really strong before. Right now, I'm not really sure. I got a little weaker because I do feel like get away most of the time. But it used to be, I would just be trying to micro jump off the middle, and all the Striker would do is just try to shoot me down the whole time. They would be doing a good job. They would be effectively pissing me off, and I had to go back to outposts and all that kind of stuff. So Striker was very powerful back then, and right now I think it's a little bit weaker, but it's obviously hard to feel. And also 1v1, you don't get that late game. I mean, you get to level 8 and probably, if you're good enough, you should be done, but you don't really feel it.
Even if you did in 1v1, like, you're not really going to be that... like the late game mechs aren't going to have as big of an influence, especially compared to 2v2 or 3v3.
Yeah, 3v3 or 2v2 is a lot more, just because there's more mechs, and the potential for mechs to actually do damage is a lot higher. Plus, meat shielding, all that stuff, so...
You're being attacked by an electrical storm right now. But either way, I really do think the Striker has been really strong, not necessarily because it's been... I mean, yes, because late game, its DPS went super high and it's a crazy dogfighter, but the level 3 ultimate is just ridiculous. Even level 2 is crazy. You just explode over outposts that are under your control, and it's very discouraging, but I guess that's another topic for another time. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I personally have noticed that mechs haven't been able to defend against pushes as badly as before. Probably still does need a lot more feeling out. Maybe we could figure out different reasons and stuff for why those things were problems. Okay, so let's just quickly move on. Mortys and Flamers were nerfed. Morty specifically, the area of damage for their grenades were reduced, and the blast damage on death for Morty and Flamer were reduced. Both were halved. So I know previously they were heavily used as bombs. So Insomniac, have you noticed the I guess the difference in usage between now and last week, pretty much.
Yeah, I've noticed the significant less usage of Mortys. Flamers still deal. I think Flamers still deal more damage on death than creepers do.
No,
I'm sorry, boomers. The same thing. If you kill a boomer before it actually explodes itself, it deals 100 damage, I believe. But flamers still deal 150, and I've still seen flamers used as bombs. But what's really been noticeable lately to me is that players, having learned that trick with the Mortys, even if it was abusing something that was needed to be fixed, I've seen more players using boomers now than ever before as their actual role the right way.
I never understood why was there an explosive damage on death just for those two specific infantry. I never understood that. And I don't understand, like, why is the penetration for their attacks so high? I mean, the reason why they use them is so they can take out tanks really fast, not for killing infantry.
Yeah. This might sound a little messed up and maybe sound like I'm mocking the Carbon logic, but they wanted it to be... They wanted it to make sense. Kind of like when a lot of people ask, why does that even happen in the first place? One of the major responses was, they have gas tanks on their backs. Why wouldn't they explode? So it's not necessarily why they do. It's the retort was, why they don't, which is really strange to me. And I mean, they could, but maybe the piercing for that, or the weapon value for that explosion should be lower, or the radius should be lower, or something like that, because the representation of the size of infantry to the size of tanks are not really realistic in AirMech, obviously. So, yeah.
Well, one other thing. Can I point out one other thing real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing, the other Morty change, the area damage change, while making a difference, I still feel like the real core issue with the Mortys and how strong they are is their piercing value. Since you brought up piercing, because their weapon value is 45, so they're slightly better than Jackal with piercing.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, because the issue wasn't the area of effect hurting tanks. It's the penetration value that's hurting the tanks. The area of effect is supposed to be countering light units, not the tanks.
Well, is it just spy units though? I mean, I sort of like, obviously, because I use it and I freaking love it, but I like using it till tanks. I like to send it in rushes with my tanks, just because AoE and decent amount of damage, and they also have a decent amount of HP, so they actually turn out to be pretty good meat shields. So, I think I like that it has high piercing, and I think it should keep that, because it's the few infantry that actually have high piercing and can do well or okay against type units.
This is blending.
And it's actually doing crazy great.
This is blending into the next topic. We can cover it. We can cover it then. Okay, so
Perfect.
let's drop that now. The damage on death has dramatically affected the usage. I mean, it was only really heavily used those ways for like the last maybe 3 weeks at the most, really, because no one really noticed, to be quite honest, until someone realized it, and then everybody started using Flamer and Morty bombs. Flamers had more damage on death, but Mortys would do a lot of AoE before they died, so it's great that they are being used less for those purposes, and the more that that units are used for their intended purpose in AirMech, the better. So thank God that's. I mean, it was something that was broken to begin with, and then in a weirdly specific way. Anyway, okay, let's just really quick go on to the fact that mines now trigger instantly when a unit is dropped on them. Okay, Bonji, what do you want to say?
Bad. For now, it's horrible, just because you remove the one way to counter it, and we still have the pretty insane arm time, and we have no other way to deal with it other than actually sacrificing stuff.
No.
So I mean, the ease. Yeah, unless you have something.
No. Dropping units on the mine was not the
No,
intended way to remove it.
That's a good concept change. You remove that, and it's a good for the game. But we still then replace that hole with something else.
The
Some
arm
other way
time
to
we
remove
do.
it.
The next point was that the mine arm time, and it's not just heavy mines, it's light mines too, which is a little funny. But just specifically talking about heavy mines, the mine arm time was doubled from 1.5 to 3, and many people pretty much have said that didn't do anything, even though it was double. Like, it's still easy to put it way in advance of pushes. So, Insomniac, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, for the arm time, I think it should be up to 6. Honestly,
At least.
I've been using them for a long time. A lot of people say 7 or more, but I think that's excessive. Mines are reactive. As much as you want to pre-plan with them, they take up upkeep and all that. It's 3 seconds right now for arm time, but
Yeah.
there are counters. There's a roller unit that specifically takes reduced damage from mines. There are light units. Anything over 8 move speed, I believe, is able to safely trigger heavy mines without being destroyed. So you can use zippers, tangos, jackals. I'm not sure about jokers, but you have 3 or 4 different units that can take care of heavy mines besides disarming mine, which is a whole nother thing that you can actually do. So I think if they moved up the arm time, players would be able to handle them a lot better. I've noticed right now, heavy mines are very, very powerful because any tank push that comes across heavy mines has to come to a complete halt, and that puts your whole push at a very vulnerable point because you're away from an outpost. The enemy can put down, can prepare artillery and anti-air. So while you're stuck dealing with mines and trying to figure out how to trigger them or disarm them or whatever, they are going to start bombarding you with AoE artillery and placing seekers and flackers and shit on to keep you from being able to micro your stuff even.
Something
yeah.
I want to add. You mentioned that certain units of certain speeds can trigger mines safely. Actually, I did a test with RUI about that, and it turns out, depending on how your unit approaches the mine, it will sometimes still die, even with the speed aura boost.
Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, but did you test it where you're setting them down close to those mines? Because units do have a acceleration before they actually reach their stated speed value.
Yeah,
Who
we
do you
saw
think-
that, and
Who do you think you're talking to, Insomniac? Anyway.
Noobs.
Yeah, so yeah, we did. It's weird, like the angle of approach for some of them, the borderline ones, you know, like they definitely, if they approach at a weird angle and maybe are turning also, and then they'll take like a slightly longer path, movement path, they will actually trigger the mines. It's weird. I mean, it's such specific cases, but it is something to note.
I mean,
So maybe the mine's triggering area needs to be slightly reduced.
or you can just make the time till it explodes a little bit longer, so more units can safely pass it without accidentally getting killed.
But you
somehow.
can't do that because of as the technical people called it, thwomping.
Well, either
Flopping.
way, I think those are changes that are not that difficult to make and to figure out once they work properly mechanically. Like, we need to have the arm time much higher, we need to have the disarm time by healing units much lower, stuff like that. Like, once those big, important, broken things are changed, these little minute things aren't that big of a deal, and we can get them fixed. It's trivial for me, anyway, in terms of, like, the big picture. But I do want to note that during me and Tipsy's test, if a full speed unit is going through, it is the ones that can trigger heavy mines safely without dying are Jackal, Joker, Zipper, Tango, and that's about it, isn't it? Unless you have Speed Aura with Paladin, which I don't really know if that's... Like, maybe Paladin players would want to know that, but it's like... What could go through? I forgot, Tipsy. Like, with a higher aura?
Yeah, like with the higher ones, though, we saw like Bucky's making it safely. Flappers can make it safely.
Right. Buckies are actually fast. It's a little hilarious. Either way.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think James has actually mentioned that they will continue to change them and stuff like that. So hopefully we can get these two major things changed, and hopefully this this will influence enough. Either way, we can go to the very last thing, which actually was a patch. I don't even know what the current patch number is. I just know that it didn't break replay, so whatever. But the current patch did change probe and sentry turret build time and cost, and buffed them in those two ways. So anybody try to use sentry turrets or probes since like yesterday or 2 days ago?
Yes.
Well, you.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, sentry turrets, because of their build times now, they are a great money dump. If you're doing a tank push, you can keep spamming them out, pick 4 up, queue up 4 more, throw them behind the enemy tank line as distractions. They take more than one shot to die, and they
Oh.
do deal damage to tanks from behind because of the whole vulnerable from behind thing for tanks. But they do have purposes, mostly just harassment, honestly. A little bit of anti-infantry for those people who still do like flamer and creeper drops. They do work if you have like 3 of them. But other than that, probe spam's kind of fun right now because you can use those as distractions as well, as long as the pathings matches up with any tank push you do. Enemy units don't care what the target is, they target what's closest. So if you throw a bunch of probes down just over and over and over again and flood them, as long as you have the upkeep open, then you will be able to overwhelm your opponent with probes while your tanks destroy their army.
Well,
So-
this is all assuming that your opponent goes heavy units purely, like tanks and such. I mean, this could increase the prevalence of, gaddies and jackals, which are light units, and sentry turrets.
Well,
They're
I
too
agree with
micro-intensive.
I agree with you, but I mean, from what I've been seeing, people have not been doing that yet. I feel like people are too used to, too comfortable doing all heavy units, all tanks, all seekers, whatever. But the way these changes are coming through now, we are going to see an increase in light unit usage. I think we really will.
I don't know. I feel like seeing a good amount of Gaddy usage actually. Like since the whole Morty thing, people started using Gaddies to try to deal with the Mortys, which is good in a sense because Gaddies are coming back, but still. Then the whole problem was actually with the Mortys. But then again, a probe, I've tried it a little bit. I think it'll be good for defensive infantry spam if that still happens, but it's too, this kind of stuff like decreasing build speed, decreasing build cost, all that just kind of locks you to the outpost, and I don't like that kind of change just because AirMech has a natural restriction of like 5 units per build
Right.
or whatever. So
I mean, personally, if I was going to change the probe and the sentry turret, the probe I would have indirectly changed it by I mean, this is definitely a much more complicated way to go about this, but I would have pretty much wanted the outpost health formula to change, which would have a larger base health and a smaller percentage of the infantry inside's health. So the probe could actually, occupy the outpost and hold it for not necessarily a decent amount of time, especially compared to a lot of other infantry, but a good enough amount of time so that spamming them reasonable and not change them to be so fast to build or so cheap. And then with their previous build time and cost, it probably would have worked out a little better, I personally think. And sentry turrets, I would have liked to see their piercing go up just a little bit. Their cost before and their build time was not bad, but they used to be really heavily used to neutralize outposts, and that was really, really fun. They pretty much sucked at everything else except maybe being micro to backs of tanks and stuff like that, but I mean, even then, and honestly, increasing their piercing wouldn't have been that much of a change to microing to the backs of tanks because the whole system is lower armor on the back, so lower piercing is like kind of just like meh, not even that big of a deal. Okay, so let's just quickly cover non-gameplay changes if anybody wants to comment on them. Gothic Neo and leaderboards. Anybody?
Leaderboards, they sad.
Well, everyone.
I'm not.
They've already acknowledged that, and they said that this is just the test pass to actually get it into the game and working. So they've asked on the forums like what stats and stuff you want. Has anybody tried the Gothic Neo? I have not. I think I bought it, but I didn't use it yet. They all look
If it's
cool,
not
I
a
think.
paladin, it's ugly.
Oh god. Okay.
That's cool.
Next topic. Our first major topic of the day is infantry diversity and specialization, something that I've wanted to get out for a while now. Historically, infantry have been especially effective at certain tasks, namely neutralizing and capturing outposts, mass rush openers to take mid, and defensive spam to hold an outpost under attack. Recently, the Morty has been the infantry of choice, preceded by a countless list of others in a seemingly never-ending sequence of the best, in quotes, infantry, nerfed, followed by the next best one taking its place. Many have attributed the cycle to the fact that when it comes down to real game situations and performance, most infantry tend to be used the exact same way. So how can the current implementation of the majority of infantry... oh, actually, hold on. I changed this. I'm so dumb. I need to change this. I'm going to change this on the stream live. Because I plan ahead and am professional. Shut up.
Nope.
Kablam. Alright, so, what nature of differences should there be between infantry units to increase diversity, Tipsy?
Well, this is a difficult question because it depends on the era you were playing in, and I mean, just seeing from as the development of AirMech went on, when I first came in, we had just normal outposts, and since outposts were the core, and they were just lit by bulbs, therefore any unit that enters it is always, it's like communism, they're all the same. So at that time, probes were great. But when we swapped over to this new bunker system instead of bulbs, it changed everything. Like the like units like brutes and soldiers were more preferred because they had higher health and increased the efficiency of the outposts. But at this time, there was no such thing as what I would call smart infantry, where you can give them orders and such. But as they were slowly being added, though, they tried to diversify the infantry. But as they tried doing that, though, lately, it seems like forgotten. Like the main purpose of infantry is to capture posts, not to really engage all these heavy units. So units like the probes and the runner, they've lost purpose. The units like the SAM and the soldier are now stuck in limbo. And then you got these high-end units like Mortys and Flamers and God knows what, that's like just dominating because they're way too on the right end of the spectrum where they're really good against heavy units, which is really all that matters in the end. But like, what they need to do, I guess, is they need first of all decide like, okay, all infantry are going to be smart or all going to be dumb. That's like the first thing. They need like set the ground rules first.
+1.
They did move a direction.
I think they're trying to move to the smart infantry direction, which I disagree with.
Every single infantry nowadays that's released, and they gave functionality to the fixer recently too, can take orders. So, I mean, everything that's left is just the ones from way before, and yeah.
And guess what? Those are the least used.
Yeah. I when it comes to that subject, I've been sort of back and forth. I really did like it before. It gave an interesting dynamic to how infantry are used. It gave purpose to the sergeant. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that infantry have legs, and they can stop moving the legs once commanded to stop moving the legs. I mean, are they that dumb that they can't stop moving their legs? And it's a little it boggles my mind sometimes that I think they kind of they weren't able to accept commands before simply because of the mechanic that Tipsy was talking about, where infantry. Did you even mention that before infantry or before neutralization, outposts could just have direct bulb switching when the infantry walked in? I don't know if you said that or not.
What, the bulb switching?
Yeah. Either way, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but look at my really early videos. Mute them because my casting was terrible at the time. But you could directly make infantry walk into enemy outposts, and the bulbs would change colors, so it would just be an infantry spam fest. And that was one of the biggest reasons to not allow infantry to gain commands, just because it would have been really powerful. The mechanics have changed. The mechanics have changed greatly for outpost neutralization since then, and I don't know how powerful giving commands to infantry would be, but that's sort of not necessarily the topic of this question. So Bonji, you were starting on Mortys and Flamers and all that stuff in the last. Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry. Yeah.
Infantry special. Are you playing? Are you Insomniac? Go.
God.
Okay, good, because I was gonna call dibs anyways. The thing is, you talk about the cycle of the OP one infantry to rule them all that people always favor, and there was reasons behind that. For a good amount last year, up until sometime this year, there were hidden bonus damage modifiers. Infantry had bonus damage versus outposts, players didn't know this. So when we had balance debates or got mad because something was OP, like flamers, the flamer spam before, there's damage modifiers that were affecting how much damage flamers were actually doing to the outposts. Besides, on top of that, you actually had, I believe flamers have a anti-infantry bonus damage modifier. So stuff like that really hurt the ability to understand why certain infantry were so overpowered. And I'm not sure what the numbers are now. I know they've been reduced. Some of them may be zeroed out for the multipliers. But there's, I think the biggest problem right now is there's just some stat changes that need to happen. Certain things like jumpers, when jumpers were OP, they got double nerfed. They had their burst damage between shots increased. So there's more wait time between when they fired. But then their damage was also reduced at the same time. And personally, I feel like they need their weapon piercing increased because they are rocket, infantry, and the Mortys with their AoE damage, with the amount of units they can hurt with AoE damage, they need a lower piercing because they can already deal damage to a number of units and get a lot more damage dealt in general because they're AoE. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
and as for the old units, there's some stat number things that need to be changed, but overall, they can be fixed just by stats alone and not mechanics.
But if I may, we have similar units, like Jumper and Sam's, right? How are we supposed to differentiate between the two of those?
Jumper's a burst damage.
I'm a firm believer in mechanics over stats, so I like to see more mechanical changes, actually different units. So jumpers, they jump, right? That'd be their main gimmick. You should be using them because they can sometimes jump and they do funny things or whatever. But Morty's their AoE, that should be their strongest, I think. So with that, I think that we need to really work more gimmicks. So the way to split jumper from Sam's, I think we should give them both about the same stats, but jumpers something should be happening when they jump. I don't know what they're doing when they jump. They just jump and look cool.
They're dodging.
They dodge.
Yeah,
they dodge, but
yeah.
is that a big deal? That's just kind of more HP.
Yeah.
I still kind of want them to be able to jump over terrains. Rush output. I want to see that happen.
I thought that was the initial thing, so I started sending them on T and Y, but they're just they just kept walking their normal way. I thought they could jump from Nestorn, jump over that chasm.
If that happened, the pathing would be ridiculously difficult to figure out. That's not even.
No, I think they would just have to go and it just have to be a complete jump. Okay. They can make the jump. They'll make the jump. I don't know.
It's so easy.
Okay.
Whatever. Whatever.
But I agree with you that each infantry needs their own gimmicks, and again, Jumper is supposed to be a burst damage unit, whereas Sam is a continuous firing, damage machine, basically.
Okay, one thing I want to say about that is, whatever the gimmicks are, they need to be worthwhile enough to bring specific things over other specific things, and by things I mean infantry.
Yes.
Another thing I want to touch on, though, I'm going to go back to the fact that frequently in the past and even currently, infantry are not used for what you might initially think they would if you're not an AirMech player. Infantry are really great at neutralizing for some reason, and they can take the outpost and defend the outpost if you bunker infantry, have a couple Mortys around, because they're very good at those roles. We need to drill down to what we think infantry should do and make them do those things so they can't do everything. I personally am of the belief that infantry should not be good at neutralizing at all. I'm personally so extreme in that view that I would be okay with a hidden damage multiplier in terms of infantry not being able to do damage to posts. I would rather that not happen. I would generally prefer to see infantry have a slightly higher piercing value with lower DPS values, therefore not really that great against outposts in general. That way you can't use the same thing to neutralize the outposts as you can to claim it under your control. This is again another roundabout balance problem, which we kind of touched last week. where maybe light units could get back into that role, not necessarily by nerfing infantry, but also, in addition to that, buffing light units to begin with. I hate you, Bonji. Anyway.
I agree with you. Go ahead, Bonj.
No, Tipsy.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you go
No,
first.
I think we discussed the two main things. I brought up one, and the one RUI brought up about the outpost mechanics is the other one, is that there were damage modifiers that gave infantry extra damage versus specifically against outposts, and that's why they were better.
Oh boy, I just disconnected from Mumble.
So the infantry were too good at that role, so instead of nerfing the modifier, they buffed the outposts instead, and then later when things were still broken, they then nerfed the infantry individually to balance things out, but that left light units kind of sitting by the side going, shit, outposts are stronger and infantry are still preferred because they're still as good or better at neutralizing than we are.
Yeah, actually, I remember when they did that change, and I started feeling like, why are my tanks in my mech? They can't kill the outpost as fast anymore. And then, like, I used to do, like, a runner rush, where I would use, like, runners with Aura, Paladin, and Speed. They would just zip across, disable the outpost, and take it. When they changed that, though, that really screwed all that up, and it just brought them down. And it feels like no units can effectively take it out unless you're attacking on, like, it's like a whole war zone just for that one outpost, almost.
Well, that's... The armor needs to get reduced, I think, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
Just FYI, Insomniac, for some reason I DC'd from Mumble for about 10 seconds in the middle of your rant.
I'm not repeating myself.
Anyway, but yeah, one thing I want to just mention is I've always kind of been a fan of the concept of infantry should be supplemental army units, like kind of like how Bungie likes using Mortys, although Mortys are a little OP. And he's sort of really taking advantage of that fact. I would really like to see infantry integrated might not be the right word, but like used in the middle of armies, in the middle of pushes, because I like the fact that infantry are very damage to cost efficient in terms of using them, and they die really quick and stuff. It's not necessarily better than a tank in that sense, but because they're really cost efficient, if you mix them into armies, they would be pretty good as long as you're being aggressive enough.
+1.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's just another role that infantry are not really used at, I guess, except for Mortys.
No, they can be, though.
No, I know. I mean, right now, Mortys can do it all. It's a little funny to say things like, I'd like to see infantry do this, I'd like to see infantry do that, when almost all of them can't really do that, except for the Morty is, like, amazing at it. I'd like the Morty to be nerfed a little bit. But yeah, I mean... Yes, insane. Saying bringing fixers in his pushes.
Butcher's gotta do well. Be decent.
Yeah. Butchers also, because they're kind of designed to do damage to tanks. Butchers are amazing mixed in with other things. Number one, defending. They're really good at defending against pushes because they don't die as often since they're mixed in with their own units, and they do huge amounts of damage for their costs and efficiency and all that stuff. And also, they are really great at being mixed in with pushes. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna dim this picture, but we finally have CarbonSMASH joining us. Greetings, sir.
Hi, Smash.
Hello.
Unless.
Hello.
Okay. Anyway, I have your picture dimmed. So right now we're on the topic of infantry. We're moving a lot slower than I would like to, but honestly, this topic we could go like 2-3 hours on. I might just do extra recording at the end of the episode, but yeah, we've kind of gone through a lot in terms of what we'd like to see the infantry do. Not the infantry, but infantry in general.